Welcome to the Following the Joy podcast with me, Debbie Westwell, confidence and mindset coach and massive travel enthusiast. This podcast is a place to talk about being the best version of yourself, following your heart, making scary changes and having fun on this adventure that we call life. I'm your biggest cheerleader and I want you to know that it is never too late to start over and make a life you are excited to get out of bed for. So let's go and get following the joy. In this week's episode, I am talking to Karen Shirlow, who is just an awesome human being. She's amazing. She's a neurosculptor, and we talk about how you can rewire your neural pathways. She talks us through some of her childhood, kind of going through a divorce, separating herself from a business, kind of hitting that real low rock bottom self, and just reflecting on how she doesn't want to be a victim in life anymore and how she's changed her life accordingly. She shows us some wonderful techniques about how you can calm yourself down, techniques you can use to practice, to drop into your body, to kind of listen to your intuition and yourself. We have a really just beautiful conversation about how we can't really blame other people, but things happen for reasons. You know, we've learned what we've learned because our parents, rightly or wrongly, have taught us that. And it's not a blame game or anything like that. It's just such a wonderful, heart-lifting episode. Chatting to her was just a dream. So, as always, I hope you enjoy. Hi, Karen. Welcome to the Following the Joy podcast. I am so excited to have you here because you have got such a wonderful story and some amazing skills that I can't wait for you to share with everybody.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me on.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Okay, so for our lovely listeners out there, just go ahead and introduce yourself and then obviously we'll flow with the conversation as we always do from there.
Yeah. So I'm Karen Shirlow. On socials, I'm known as the Neurosculptor. I'm a trauma-informed somatic coach and emotional release facilitator, which is pretty cool because that means every day I get to do what I truly believe I was put on this earth here to do. And that is to witness, facilitate, guide deep transformation on a neural and cellular level. I really work with people who are not intimidated by going deep, and I help people connect back to their hearts so that they can live life from a place of truth, passion, purpose, and integrity.
So yeah, connect back to your hearts. We all need to do more of that. I can't even tell you how many times I've been told that throughout my life from different coaches, therapists. I've even had a tarot card reader say, you need to get out of your head and connect back into your body a little bit more.
Absolutely.
It's super important.
But it requires us to be vulnerable, and I think that we're so trained to be in our mind and protected, and guarded that it can feel like quite a tender, vulnerable process to go back to the heart. But that's where the magic is, I believe. I believe that when we connect back with our heart, we emit a frequency, a magnetic frequency that will naturally draw towards you that which is meant for you, all opportunities, people and experiences. If you're living from your heart space, they will come to you.
Oh, yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, so how long have you been doing this for?
Almost 10 years, nine and a half now. I started my journey about 9.5 years ago, and it has been a lifelong commitment. I don't think it'll ever end. I think I remember at the beginning when I started, I thought, oh, that's me, I'm fixed after the sort of first round. We're layers to this.
There's always more layers. There's always more layers. I cannot even tell you how many people I talk to, and it's just we're like an onion. But I think the more you do this, you show your vulnerabilities, you work on one level of trauma or layer or whatever, then what happens is it gets easier to recognize it as it's coming up, and it gets easier to deal with because you've already got things in place. So it's like a quicker way of processing through the lower layers.
Yeah, and as you level up and, as you start to expand, then new opportunities require a new level of growth. And so it continues. So the journey continues.
Okay, so you haven't always been doing this. Are you all right to share a little bit about your journey to kind of getting to this point?
Yeah, absolutely. Where to start? There's so many places. We'll start at the very beginning. So I came into this world a deeply sensitive, intuitive and imaginative child. I dreamt of being on stage. I would spend hours daydreaming and making up stories. And unfortunately, these gifts or these traits were not really recognized as the gifts that I experience them as now. They were really not nourished, and in fact, in some cases, they were labeled as being disruptive or needs to pay more attention or easily distracted. So it didn't really feel safe for me to own them or nourish them. And very quickly, I learned to abandon these sort of aspects of myself in favor of what was more acceptable to the outside world. Alongside this, I grew up with a very high achieving sister. She was a straight A student. She was gorgeous. She was popular. She really was everything that I wanted to be, but truly believed I was not. And I would go to bed every night as a little girl and pray to God, like, please, God, just make me good at something. And when nothing appeared, nothing tangible changed, I got really good at being good. I got really good at being what everybody else wanted me to be. Yeah, and that made me really popular because I was habitually agreeable, fun, likable, but I really entered into my early adult life having really no understanding of who I was. And I felt very disempowered and lost, which then led me to make many big life decisions based on what was right for everyone else without ever really taking into consideration if it was right for me. And so at the age of 36, I found myself really at a turning point in my life. I felt like I had hit rock bottom. I was in crisis. And in the same month, when I was 36, I left my marriage of 16 years and my business. I was an interior designer. I was working with my sister at the time. I left that. We'd been running that business for 16 years. So I found myself at 36 really not knowing who I was.
So you literally like pulled the rug out from underneath yourself and got rid of everything, business, husband, everything.
It felt like do or die. It really felt like do or die. I had a 10-year-old daughter at the time as well, which it was not easy, but it really was one of these, it didn't feel like a choice. It felt like a necessary move. As a result of that choice, I then spent the next 2 years realizing that all these friendships that I had, built up over the years really were based on the foundation of me remaining the same broken version that they had met me. And so these friendships just fell like dominoes. And so for 2 years, I ruminated and stewed in a pool of self-pity, really unable to move past the grief and the pain and the hurt. Until one day I was lying in my living room floor with my head in my hands, crying, saying, why are they doing this to me? I'm a good person. And this message came seemingly out of nowhere. I now recognize it was my intuition that says, what is it that you enjoy so much about remaining victim in this story?
Wow.
And it was an epiphany because I realized it really was the only way I ever knew how to be seen. That was the agreeable underdog, the girl that would never succeed. And so that literally was a life-changing moment for me that I'm so grateful for now.
Wow. I mean, goodness. I think the fact that I can't even imagine what you must have felt like in that, you've come out of a long-term marriage, you've got a 10-year-old daughter to support and obviously help through the breakup of your marriage, but also you've come out of your business with your sister, which again is dissolving a partnership, but it's a partnership that you can't disassociate with because it's your sister, so it's blood, it's a blood relative. Plus then all of those people who you thought you were friends have just passed you by on the wayside, because I mean it comes down to those messages that we get told or we teach ourselves as children, and you have just articulated it perfectly, of that like good girl syndrome of just like, shut up, people please, don't cause a scene, just fly underneath the radar, just smile, be pretty, that kind of thing. Whatever those things, I'm sure people who are listening can probably relate to that in some way, shape or form. In order to survive in life, ultimately we've been told these things. And then it must have felt like you were just like on a like a tropical island on your own, like not a paradise island at all, you know, like completely alone. But that's so powerful about like, what is it about the situation that you are willing to stay victim to? That's, I mean, very, very strong wording, which I think you probably needed to hear at the time from your intuition. But also, I would encourage anybody who's listening now, if you are in a situation that you're not happy with, I mean, obviously, Karen had multiple situations and she dealt with them all in one go. Well, you know, if you are in a situation, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's a work thing, maybe it's a business, whatever it is, maybe it's a sticky friendship. But yeah, maybe if you just ask yourself that question, like, what is it about it that you are willing to stay a victim in, because you can make choices. But yeah, I can't even imagine what that must have felt like, because you must have just felt completely lost and desolate.
Oh, I did. And you know, as the question came to me, and genuinely, it just came from nowhere. I wasn't thinking about it. I felt sick to the pit of my stomach because, you know, I had to face my deepest truth. I had to face the part of me that I didn't want to see, the part of me that was playing into this role. You know, up until that point, I was projecting all of my pain out into the people that were taking advantage of me, that were, you know, really bullying me to some degree, and it was my interpretation. And I'm not saying that their behavior was kind or acceptable in any way. That was a truth, but that there was a part of me feeding into that. There was a part of me that accepted that, and I had to take a deeper look at that part, and really, with compassion, you know, I became able to look at it from this place of neutrality and go, what is this part showing me? You know, where am I feeling this in my body? And what does this part really need? You know, and really with compassion and patience and kindness, really gently inquire as to how I can support this part of me. Because the truth is, the insecure parts that felt inadequate did not believe that I had the ability to stand on my own 2 feet and take responsibility for my own happiness. You know, I believed that that was going to come for me from the outside and not from the inside out.
Yeah. And I think that's such an important thing as well, isn't it? Because, like, you know, you hear so many people saying it's your choice, you choose how to react to situations, which is 100% true. But when you're not in a great space, you're going, what do you mean? I want to blame other people, because it's easier to blame other people because the brain's happy with me blaming other people. It comes back to what we were saying before about dropping into your body as opposed to staying in your brain. Your brain keeps you safe, but it keeps it safe by blaming everybody else. And at some point you've got to look internally, and it's scary. It's scary as hell, because, you know, I'm not hell scary. I mean, I don't know. I've never been there, but you know, like, it's super scary to hold a mirror up to yourself and be like, oh, I've architected my life until this point, and now I've got to make a physical change and look deeply and be like, why is it that? And sometimes it's a reflection on the way we were raised as a family. And, you know, that's not to say that you don't love your family still. It's to say that, you know, they just did the best that they could in the times that they had with the knowledge that they had. And maybe that's not right for you. And you can undo stories and beliefs, but it does take a while, doesn't it? So
yeah. And I think that the key is to really inquire with that compassion. We're so used to looking at these parts with a perspective of judgment, and we try and change our behavior with this narrative of like really blaming. And instead, we're showing these parts the understanding, which creates enough safety in our system to then allow those parts to be integrated and reclaim the power and energy that's actually behind them. Because the truth is, we generally, you know, abandon our brightness first. You know, the part of me that was the dreamer, the part of me that was a real sensitive feeler, the creator, you know, that was abandoned straight away. And, you know, there was a narrative that came along with that was, I'm weak, I'm wrong. And so when I looked at the part of me that felt vulnerable and believed that I was incapable to stand on my own 2 feet, it actually was that brightness. So I reclaim that brightness. I get to bring it back into my wholeness, and then I'm able to anchor into it and utilize it and share it with those who are ready to receive it. So, these parts, if we're looking at them with the narrative of I'm blaming and shaming, they will never feel safe enough to be fully seen, witnessed, held, and understood.
Yeah, and you're so right as well. And it goes back to, I've used the term dimmed my sparkle or dulled my sparkle before. And it's like, when you're talking to somebody, when they're super passionate about something, because it literally shines out of them like a light. So I guess people who are listening, is there something that you've repressed in your life that actually brought you that shine and happiness? And if you're really, truly honest, has something dimmed that light? And is there a way of getting it back? Because that's probably, for now, what you should be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's allowing yourself to meet yourself where you're at. I think when we have desires and dreams where we're trying to be there so fast, that urgency and that force creates the jarring in your system. That urgency will create the survival chemistry, which would really narrow your ability to inquire. So it's like, well, here's where I'm at. How do I feel about this? And it's like just meeting yourself in the moment with patience as well, taking your time to truly understand, because when you're meeting these younger parts, we really need to be the parent that you didn't have available to you at that time. And that's not to say that my parents weren't beautiful, loving, kind parents, but mistakes were made inevitably. They're not, they don't, we're not given a handbook.
No, exactly. And they learn from their parents. And let's face it, our parents' parents were wartime parents. So they had a whole different kind of trauma level going on that they learned from, of like scarcity and no food. And you didn't know whether your partner was going to come back. And there was a bit of fear there. So they've raised their children the only way that they know how, which with some of the knowledge from their parents. So you can see how it goes back linearly through the generations, that, you're doing the best you can. And if you are parents out there, you've probably found yourself doing something and then questioning, going, when did I turn into my mum? Like, I started saying the same things because it's been in you since you were a little girl or a little boy or whatever it is. And
when we come into the world, or we're trying to connect. It's absolutely a fundamental need to connect. If someone doesn't look after, we can't take care of ourselves. So it's at a survival level, we need to connect. And so our primary caregiver is generally our mum and our dad. So they are, they have such an impression on how safe it is for us to connect with the people around us. So we'll adapt accordingly. If you've got a mum who's not present, you might learn to be hidden and small to accommodate that and make the situation feel safe. And this is all unconscious. This is neuroceptively is the word we call that. It's not like we're cognitively figuring this out, or our survival system will automatically adjust for us. And so then we have these adaptations of survival that we then believe are part of our personality or who we are. And actually, it's been an adaptation to really get by in the world.
Wow. I mean, you're so ridiculously intelligent. It's awesome. You can tell that you've fully immersed yourself into this, and like you're just like a living, breathing example of it, which is amazing. Let's go back though. So you were in that really bad place. You've had your intuitive download telling that you no longer need to be a victim. What was the first kind of steps that you took from there?
So it's interesting you should say I'm so intelligent, because there was always an insecure academic in me that thought, right, I'm going to learn everything I can about this.
Compared to your sister though, probably.
Yeah. Well, that was I think where it came from. So I then went and I trained in a modality called the havening technique. The reason why I trained in it was because it was such a new healing modality and I couldn't find a practitioner in Ireland.
Oh, wow.
So I thought, well, it's the only way I can learn this. It really resonated. And again, that's my intuition. It was always there. I just hadn't really learned to fully recognize it and trust it. So it is a psychosensory technique, which basically means it involves the mind and a specific applied touch. And when you apply this touch, it creates an electrical chemical change in your brain. Your brain will go into a delta wave state, which is the slowest brain wave state your brain can be in. And when you're in this state, your body creates serotonin, a GABA, oxytocin, all these very nourishing neurotransmitters, and it decreases the stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline. And so that was transformative, instantly. Remember when I was at my first training, I witnessed a demo and it was so powerful and unbelievable that I looked around the room and thought, does anybody else believe this bullshit?
Like, where's the hidden camera?
That's what I thought. The subject, who is now actually a friend of mine, she had a very traumatic experience, and within 20 minutes, this encoded moment had been delinked from her brain. Now, she still knew this had happened to her. She still was aware, that it wasn't a nice experience, but the trigger, the feeling that was alive in her body and the memory of it was completely disconnected. It became neutral and benign. And so, for PTSD in particular, this technique is very effective. But it can also help really release big networks of emotions. So I remember one of the teachings that I went in to release some of the emotions that were around the betrayal from the friends that I'd experienced. What was pretty interesting was they would get you to think of the emotion that you feel when you think of that situation. And I thought, well, I'm going to be really angry, or I'm going to be really hurt, and actually I defaulted to guilt, which, allowing myself to get out of the way, the people pleaser in me, the good girl that felt really guilty for having left. What was the first emotion that came up? And that was an outpouring that was so intense. But as a result of that, I never felt guilty ever again about it, which was so liberating. Be free of that burden of guilt from, that moment in time was transformative. So that was pretty powerful. And I immediately realized that this was a calling, that this was something that I had to share with other people. So I trained and I certified. That took a year. Then I went on to train in neuro-linguistic programming, which you might have heard of. Another modality called brainwork recursive therapy, which is about building new neural connections in your brain. I then trained in another modality called polyvagal theory, which is really understanding the nervous system. And then more recently, I trained in a modality called neo-emotional release. So I attended a 10-day retreat in Portugal. But during that time, I developed a frozen shoulder and was very unwell. It was so painful. I don't know if you've ever had one, but I wouldn't wish on anyone. So that then felt like another level, another initiation, I call it. It was like I had this frozen shoulder. I used my arms for work, and the universe had literally stopped me in my track. Yeah. So that felt incredibly uncomfortable, because what I'd realized now was that I was finding this sense of self-worth through being a really good practitioner, being a really good therapist. And I had to stop. I stopped working for 8 months to really heal. And so during that 8 months, I obviously by this stage had the self-awareness, the somatic tools to really go deep into what what was residually still alive within me. And I embarked in some plant medicine journeys as well. And so there was some real profound growth and changes, transformation that occurred in the past 10 months at a really accelerated rate. And that was where I really felt like I fully connected back with my heart, and now very much rely on my intuition guiding me, as opposed to any logical, rational intellect being the source that I rely upon. Yeah.
And that's so interesting as well, because now you can see that repeated across the world, but in different people calling it different things. So I'm with you. I kind of call it like intuition. I get it from the universe or whatever it is. But, people say that they listen to God, or they listen to angels or whatever it is. But essentially, it's that internal kind of feeling, as opposed to thinking it through and rationalizing it in your brain again. And I love that you've learned all of those kind of holistic therapies, but yours seem to be like very scientifically kind of based background. So, I mean, there's an awesome book called Why Woo Woo Work, because actually a lot of what people class as woo woo kind of techniques and practitioner methods are all based on some form of scientific proof and background, even if they can't prove everything. I mean, like, people have been doing reflexology for thousands and thousands of years, from China in Eastern medicine, but nobody can actually prove a physiological, there's a nerve between your big toe and, you know, your head or whatever it is. So, but we know that it works. And so it's kind of like that. I love that balance of, there's some scientific proof behind it. And obviously a lot of what you do is, like, you know, you've talked about the nervous system and how that works, and like the neuroscience side of things, but also like that kind of, we know that air keeps us alive when we breathe it, but we can't see it. And we use the Wi-Fi system at our homes, but we can't see the electricity flying through the air to get to our laptops to make it work, or the network or whatever it is. So it has to be some part of belief and some part of science. But I love that what the path that you've gone down seems to be a lot of kind of science-based, but still holistic therapies and like healing yourself. I just love the whole modalities of you can heal yourself. Like, obviously I'm not a doctor, so if your doctor's telling you to take medicines, I'm not telling you not to take medicines. All I'm saying is, I just genuinely believe that all of these ways and methods, you can genuinely start to heal yourself. So do you have a favorite one, or do you kind of use all of them?
I do. I sort of intuitively use them all. I integrate them all, but I will always bolt on haven and touch to what, no matter what way I'm working, I will empower people to really tap into the magic that is in their hand. You know, we can utilize havening to help you move away from pain if you need space. You know, it's really important that when we're on a healing journey, that if we're in a place of overwhelm, that we don't try and go deeper, because that's really not going to be the most helpful thing for your system in that moment. We might need to create more space and distraction or resourcing, like in a grounded way. But if we're in like a space where we've got enough room and safety in our systems to go deeper, then that's when we want to be going into those deeper channels, because we're not going to overwhelm the system and send it into sort of hijack it into fight or flight. So what's beautiful about havening is it's this electrical chemical exchange that's created. I'll show you the 3 movements.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So it's so simple. You can do this at any time. The first movement is literally moving your palms, stroking your palms up and down in an upwards movement. I like to have my hands in the position of prayer, just because it creates a nice feeling inside me, but it wouldn't matter if they're downwards or upwards or sidewards.
Oh.
Just find your natural rhythm, your natural cadence, you know, that feels soothing for you. And then there's another stroking technique. So if you cross your arms across your chest, from your shoulders, you're rubbing down to your elbows in a slow stroking movement. Yeah.
So you don't go back up, just all down all the way.
Down and back up. So you're down to your elbows and back up to your shoulders and down. And then the third one is across your face. So it's just across your forehead and your cheekbone. And so this is basically creating this delta wave. This is the same brainwave state that you'll have in the deepest part of your sleep. And this is what produces this chemistry. And so this chemistry creates an internal safety, and it will allow you to reach a deeper state of unconscious material. Because you're in this bubble of safety, you are now able to access some of those truths that were unavailable to you when you're not in this delta wave state. So regardless of whatever modality I am using, I will always invite people to start introducing haven and touch. And I generally just say, look, start off, make it a simple habit. You know, don't be trying to do anything really too creative with it. And a really good place to start is start doing it in the morning in the shower, 3 minutes. It's a really good song. Embrace the rhythm of the song, embrace the music, the feeling, put on songs that make you feel a certain way. If you want to feel happy, put on a happy song. If you want to feel calm, put on a calm song. but then begin to bring that music and the frequency of it into your body as you apply this touch. And it's like a boost button. It's like putting any work that you do, it's like putting it on steroids and really trying to boost in the potency.
And it's free. It's free.
And you have your two hands. So, you know, I think one of the things when people come to see me in person, and I am actually facilitating the touch if they wish, you know, obviously everybody's different, but most people will allow me to apply the touch. And when they notice the change, you know, you might have activated a deep traumatic memory or, a network of emotions, and they feel that release that I was describing when I was free from that guilt. You know, it's like they look and they go, how did you do that? And they sort of think that I'm a magician in some way. And I'm like, no. Your hands are every bit as magic as mine. You know, I do recommend that if you're going to do really deep work, then have someone hold that space for you. Have someone that trained, understands trauma, knows what way to navigate your system. But for a self-help tool to help soothe in moments of distress, to help boost your affirmation, to help create just a feel-good spaciousness in your body, I would say get practicing Haven and Touch.
So, for example, if you're going into a meeting or you've got an interview and something like that, or you've got a speaking part, whatever it is, would that help with that?
Absolutely.
With the intention of like just calm and...
You know, this morning before I got up, I knew I was coming onto this podcast. It's important to me. It was something that I'd set out to do this year. I was like, I really want to do podcasts. I want to come across, want to get my message across, you know. And so, of course, I would go to Haven, you know, after the first singing. You can just get your into it. You know, I'm dancing away. And that's another thing I do every morning now since, you know, because I hurt my shoulder, although thankfully it's much better now. I committed to a practice of getting up in the morning and shaking my booty, you know, really just closing my eyes, jumping, shaking, moving, stretching to really good music. So I have a plethora of playlists that support my system because I know for me, music is a really good resource. It's a really regulating resource and I feel it so deeply.
Yeah.
Part of the power of being a sensitive, you know, I feel everything so intensely, which is now beautiful.
Oh, yeah, I love that. I'm very sensitive to music. It's not something that I choose to listen to, apart from like if I'm going for a run, I'm doing Couch to 5K at the moment. I will put obviously some music on. But when I do listen to music, it does resonate with me. And it's weird because I remember all the lyrics to all of the music, even though I never listen to music. It's so bizarre how my memory system. But yeah, I think I might have that thing, you know, where you're a little bit hourly sensitive. Like, I can't remember, misophonia or whatever. I'm not quite as bad as like people like that who like hate people chewing and stuff. But I just have to have like a really low volume of television and really low volume. But yeah, but there's still like tunes that I like. If anything with a Latin beat comes on, my bum cheeks are up and shaking, and then I'm going for it. So yeah, there's definitely something about just kind of like moving your body and shaking it out and stuff, isn't there?
Well, I find, you know, with me as a kid, getting up and going to school, those early years of school were so painful for me. I would wake up with this feeling of dread in my stomach. And in the 80s, there was really no such thing as anxiety. So this was like, I had no idea what it was. But I would feel sick every morning. I wouldn't want to eat. And it was a real feeling of deep dread. Now, when I have processed that through the modalities that I've used, I have released that energy. But what I needed to do was create a new feeling in the morning for my brain to have something else to go to. And it wasn't really until I started this dancing routine in the morning, and honestly, there's no rules to it. It really is a free for all. My husband now, he looks at me and he's going, okay, I'll give you space. Yeah, you know, and I might be tapping or whatever, clapping, dancing, shaking. But now, when I'm waking up, there's this feeling of something to really look forward to because I enjoy it so much. I love the music, and now I associate waking up with that feeling of enthusiasm and energy. You know, some days you might wake up and it's been not a great day, it's a shit day, something's happened. Let's face it, no matter how much work you do in yourself, you're still going to have life challenges that will cause stress. But I still commit to it because it shakes it away, it gets that energy up and out. And it always helps. It always helps clear the mind and clear the system. So
for me, it's a walk in nature. Like, no matter how tired, terrible, angry, frustrated, bad, rubbish I'm feeling, if I get myself out in nature, it's like just a balm to my soul. So I guess it's like finding that thing for you. But there's definitely something to be said about doing something first thing in the morning. So when I wake up, the first thing I say is, good morning, world. Today is a good day, because I've got that few seconds of changing whatever dream I've come out of and my brain states, even though I've got maybe 20,000 things on my list of things to do. So yours is obviously like, let's get up and dance. So, I mean, it could even be for some people looking forward to your coffee, but it's like, let's not make it a chore. Let's appreciate that actually you get to choose that you get to make a coffee today, and how exciting is that type of thing. So it's putting that kind of excitement and enthusiasm into whatever thing that you're going to do first thing in the morning. And I do like yours. I'm going to try the whole
please
thing.
I can see you've got the natural moves. I think that's a really beautiful exercise for anyone to do, actually, Debbie, is that you create a list of regulating resources, and you do that whenever you're feeling pretty grounded and centered, and you write it down and you think about, when I'm in this mood, because we can fluctuate between being in a fight or flight state of survival, but we can also move into a state called dorsal vagal shutdown and collapse. And that can be more of a flat state. It feels more of like I have no energy. There's a hopelessness or a lack of real enthusiasm. Basically, from a nervous system perspective, this is the numbing of the kill, this dorsal vagal shutdown and collapse. And returning back to connection is a much gentler, softer, tender approach when you're in this state. We can't really meet ourselves with that high intensity that we might when we're in a fight or flight state. So if we start to recognize when I'm in fight or flight, when I've got that cortisol and adrenaline fuel in my body, and I can feel the energy and I feel my heart beating and I can feel my tummy churning, what are the things that really help ground me and bring me back into a place of regulation when I'm in that state? And that might be a jog, that might be dancing, that might be Zumba, it might be whatever. For me, a good cry actually is a regulating resource. When I'm feeling
get a good hug.
Yeah. But if you write them down when you're in a good place, and then you look at your list whenever you're more of that flat state, and that might be something like, well, that's when I would read a book, or that's when I might just actually give myself half an hour to scroll on my phone, but that there's a discipline with it, or that might be when I want a bath, so you have these lists written down of regulating resources, so that whenever you're hijacked into that state of survival and your window of tolerance is narrowed and your ability to rational think is offline, you actually can go to your list and say, okay, which thing out of this list do I feel like I can do? And you ask your body. You ask your head to go, what, is a walk going to support me right now? Yes, well, then that's what I'm going to do. And you take it one step at a time until you find yourself coming back into this grounded, centered place. I think that is a beautiful exercise for anyone to do. And then add the even on,
Yeah, you're so right. And like I tell all my clients exactly the same thing, I call it like a self-care treatment list, but I kind of like your regulating resource side of things, because actually, it's understanding that some days I'm just going to feel tired, and some days I'm going to feel emotional, and you're going to need different things for that. But yeah, you're so right. And also going back to what you've repeated a couple of times is be compassionate with yourself and listen to your body. It's so important, isn't it? Everything drives back to listen to your heart, listen to your body. It knows what you need.
Yeah. One of the things that I notice when I'm working with clients, and I first invite them to start listening to their body, you can just sort of see that, like, what? Listen to body? What do you mean? And No, that's okay, because we've never been taught to listen to our body, and it is a different language, and we don't know what we're looking out for. We've been so disconnected from it. We're so stuck up in that frontal lobe. But, again, with patience, just meet yourself where you're at. If you can notice anything, even if it feels like it's a slight buzzing or whatever, even if you feel nothing, feel into the nothingness. Okay, I feel nothing. And again, I'm immediately, for your listeners, I'm immediately starting to haven, because whenever I'm inquiring, I want to go deeper. And so this touch is going to allow me to go into that deep state of my unconscious. And it is so transformative. So enlightening.
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you there. So for anybody listening that might be at that first point where they're like, listen to my body, what now? Are you saying go into those havening techniques, so like rubbing your hands together or rubbing your arms?
Yeah.
Or is there anything else that they can also do to kind of drop into the body and listen? What tips would you give people to do that?
Well, I would invite them to access their breath, breathing in through their nose for 3, holding for 4, out for 5 with a big sigh. And just allow yourself to be supported in that moment by the chair beneath you, the ground beneath your feet. Really ground yourself. Imagine that there are roots growing from the soles of your feet into the ground, so you're feeling that support. And then just allow your awareness to move in towards your body. So you can actually guide that, become aware of your feet, become aware of your ankles, become aware of your shins. Is there anything heavy? Is there anything contracted? Is there anything buzzing? This isn't logical. This doesn't sound rational. People might go, oh, I've got like a big brown jelly lumpy blob in my that's it's really, we're not rationalizing what's showing up, but it's really getting to understand this is an energy, this is an emotion, and energy in motion. It's an emotion that got stuck. It had to be pushed down at a time when it was too overwhelming and you didn't have the support to process it. And it keeps showing up, and that's why we're experiencing these triggers.
Yeah, that's so good. So ground yourself. I imagine roots going in, but I also, one other piece of advice is, if you think about your body, what is a most secure, stable part of your body? Like for me, it's like my thighs and my bum, because I know that like they're always there. And so sometimes I will put my hands underneath my thighs because I know that I'm being supported and grounded that way as well. So, and also like you said, it doesn't have to be, I mean, I've done it before where I've been like, what is this? And like, it's like this dark black, like coal type lump in my stomach. Or I'll be like, oh, it's kind of like going between my heart and my rib cage or whatever, or it's blue and squiggly, or, it doesn't have to make sense. And you don't have to then go back into your brain to rationalize what it actually is. Just let it be. Yeah. And then just kind of keep breathing into it. And then eventually, like, you'll get more intuitive voices, I guess, or pictures, or however your intuition comes to you. It doesn't have to be a voice, does it? So
no, not at all. And yeah, the more you practice this, the more your body will feel safe to show you what's stored. So it might begin a little slow, and you might think you're getting nothing from it. Just commit to it. Just commit to and keep checking in, and eventually your body will start to build up that trust.
Compassionately consistent.
Yes, compassionately consistent. Yeah, I love that.
We'll coin that phrase. Yeah. Oh, awesome! I mean, like, you've done so much, and like you've helped so many people, and it's really interesting that obviously you're over in Northern Ireland and you've got an amazing accent. And when I think most people listening will be like, "Hi, that's amazing." But like, it's interesting that like nobody had the havening technique. There was no practitioners in Ireland, and I find that Ireland always misses out on stuff.
Well, actually, funnily enough, havening is a very new modality in the field anyway. It's only been about 12 years. So whenever I was looking out for it almost 10 years ago, it really was so new. So there weren't practitioners really anywhere. There was, it was only coming forefront. So in fact, as a result of that training, which was in Ireland, it was in Dublin, as a result of that training, Ireland became one of the most populated places for healing.
Oh, wow.
So we were at the head of the curve, first time. But it was developed by 2 doctors, neuroscientists from New York, They're twins. One was Dr. Stephen Rudin and Ronald Rudin. And they had watched Paul McKenna, you know, the hypnotist. One of the doctors was very friendly with Paul McKenna, and he'd witnessed him perform tapping, emotional freedom technique.
Yeah.
And you had a intense phobia of cat, that she had become a recluse. She wouldn't go outside. And this neuroscientist had watched him create this change and really wanted to understand, how did this applied touch create such a change in the brain? And he dedicated the next 10 years of his life understanding how trauma gets stored in the brain and how we can move that. And the big word is called depotentiate that from the brain. So it's fantastic.
I love that, because I am on a mission in my life to kind of, when I get to that end point in my life, I would like to slide sideways into my grave, having lived the most amazing life with all my marbles with me, like fully cognizant and healthy in an old age, basically. But I do definitely believe that we need to start looking deeper. We need to start healing ourselves. I'm not against Western medicine and doctors, and it's needed at times, but I do sometimes think they only treat the symptoms and not the root cause. And ultimately, the root cause is always, the more I'm going deeper into this and talking to more people and reading more books, the more the root cause is trauma that we've had that's trapped in our bodies. And like you said, it's energy in motion, and that the emotion just needs to come out of the body, whether that's using a technique like you, whether that's using, there's plenty of techniques. It's just about finding the right person to support you through that process, but we can 100% heal ourselves. And I love that scientists and doctors and stuff are going into more kind of like studying this now, because I think, you know, in another 10, 20 years time, this should probably be on a healthcare treatment list. You know, it shouldn't always be 10 minutes with a doctor and we'll give you some medicine. But I mean, I can get on my soapbox about this. So I won't, Karen, I promise you. But so sorry, I kind of went off on a sideways one, but I mean, I'm loving this. And throughout this whole interview, you've been doing the hand havening technique, which I absolutely love, and I'm going to bring this into my life. But how do people work with you? Because obviously you mentioned that you work with people face to face, but do you do remote work as well?
Yes, I work online. I work one-on-one. I'm currently creating an online course to help people and really embody their emotions, an embodied self-inquiry course. So that's in the motion right now, but not quite there. So yeah, you can work with me online or in person, and hopefully sometime soon in the future in groups. So
amazing. You need to come over and like do something over in the UK. So, or I'll just come visit you in Ireland. You know, like I'm willing to travel the world about, maybe that's another podcast for me, travel the world for healing modalities.
That's beautiful, yeah. There is a show with that, definitely.
Okay, so how do people find you?
So you can go onto my website at karenshirlow.com. And on socials, I am the Neurosculptor. So that's the THE_Neurosculptor, all one word. That's how you can find me. And
brilliant.
Yeah,
and you're just fabulous. I will put all those links, obviously, as always, in the show notes, so you can just literally click straight away. Karen, I'm going to try and do a roundup of the key takeaway points. I think there were so many here. This is definitely an episode that I think people might have to listen back into, because you went deep in some places. Obviously, the advice that you gave, how you told people to kind of get into their body, you might want to listen that a couple of times, write it down, get it in, or, you know, use a transcriber or whatever it is to kind of get it into like how you're going to go away and do it. But let's try and pull out the key takeaways. Okay, so if you find yourself suffering with what I call good girl syndrome, which, you know, you're people pleasing, you've always kind of made yourself small, you're dimming your light, you sparkle, it's probably not you, it's come from something that you've learned as a child, and we can definitely unlearn everything. And we've got to, in order to do that, connect back to our body, connect back to our heart. That would be the first one. The second really important point was the bit that you said about, if you were in a situation at the moment, just ask yourself, what is it about this situation that you are willing to stay a victim to? And if you're no longer willing to stay a victim to, again, you can make that change and you can choose a completely different pathway, but you've got to get out of that victim mode.
And also
bit
it's recognizing recognizing that victim narrative has been a protector. It's really important that we're not, otherwise we'll be resistant.
It's not a shaming thing.
And we don't want to shame that victim. That victim narrative has been there as a protector for some deeper, more unconscious fear.
Yeah, so it's almost like we've got to go back to compassionately thank ourselves and that part of ourselves for protecting us.
Yeah,
but actually, we're ready to move on now, like as a collective, whole body person, inner child, everything. Okay, so then I guess a big question is, what bits of your life have you abandoned that used to make you sparkle, light up, shine? Because that actually might be the way you need to move forward, especially if you're kind of feeling a little bit unhappy in your life at the moment and you're not sure that you can move forward, or you're too old, or you've got too many bills, or whatever it is. You can 100% do it. You've just got to make a little bit of step, but find that sparkle. And sometimes looking backwards at our childhood helps us find what brought that sparkle up for you, like that creativity, brain space, play acting thing.
Interestingly, I revisited that part of me quite recently. And as I connected with the little girl who dreamed of being on stage, that really felt unseen, and I connected with her. I felt so much grief outpouring, an outpouring of grief really flowing out of me for all the times I wasn't seen, for all the dreams that weren't fulfilled, for all of and I allowed it to flow. And I, really felt this energy like moving through quite intensely. And eventually, as you allow the intensity of that energy to move through, you'll come to a clearing. And when I was in that space of clearing, I saw my daughter, who was on stage regularly. She was a real fantastic performer. And there was many times that I would have celebrated her and so much pride in my heart. And I witnessed her and I was like feeling this pride and this celebration. And all of a sudden I took my younger self and put her on that position on that stage. And I clapped and I smiled and and so we've got to remember, on a cellular level, my body cannot tell the difference if that's me on the stage right now or if that was. And so I am creating deep change on a neural and cellular level, really allowing myself to be celebrated and seen in a way that feels very real.
Yes. Oh, that's such a beautiful story as well. And just goes to show that you can change, you can rewrite your story. And like you said, your brain doesn't know the difference between the truth and what you're kind of visualizing and stuff as well.
Borrowing the pride and celebration that I had for my daughter to offer to my younger self allowed it to be a very real experience in my body.
Oh, I love that. I see you, Karen. You're blinking awesome.
We all are. If only we just knew it.
Okay, let's go on to the last 4, which are fun, like takeaways. So that havening technique, don't forget you can use that. So it was rubbing your hand together from side to side, like almost in a prayer position, but you can do it at any point. Stroke it opposite arms, opposite hands to opposite shoulders, and stroking down your arms. And then also from like fingers from your inner eyebrows to your outer eyebrows, and then kind of underneath your eyes the same way. So basically the way you put in eye cream on. Put your eye cream on every morning and do a havening technique. The next one is get up and dance. Do the havening technique whilst dancing, but get up and dance, just move your body. Make sure you've got that regulating resource list or self-care list, and do it when you're in a good space. So if you're, feeling on a high, coming off listening to this podcast, take 5 minutes, sit down now and write down what you can do to regulate, whether it's baths, whether it's the havening technique, whether it's a bit of meditation, whether it's just 5 deep breaths, whatever it is. Asking somebody to give you a hug. That's my big one. I always find that when I get into a really low spot, I just want somebody to give me a giant hug. It's obviously, it releases the chemicals that you need in your body. And then finally, the very important one, listen to your body. So you might want to go back and listen how you kind of drop down into your body, but listen to your body. It will never steer you wrong.
Yeah. You will be able to go onto my website and access a little trigger transformation process worksheet, which will help guide you on that process of listening to your body as well. So if you want to
Amazing.
add notes on that, they're there to be.
Yeah. Oh, that's perfect. Karen, I could have talked to you all day. Honestly, I feel like I could just talk to you about this forever. But obviously, this is a podcast episode and people have probably finished the journey driving or finished the cleaning of the bathroom or whatever it is they're doing. But thank you ever so much for spending time with me today. It's been an absolute dream and a pleasure. So thank you ever so much.
Oh, thank you. Honestly, I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's been very nourishing. Thank you so much.
Take care. Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. And as always, any links or anything mentioned will be in the show notes. If you haven't connected with me already, I'd love to meet you. So come find me on Instagram at Debbie Westwell. You can always slide into my DMs and let me know what you thought about this episode. Or why not join my Facebook community, the Alchemy of Self-Care free community. You can also find out how to work with me at debbiewestwell.com. If you like what you hear, then please follow me or hit the bell icon. Share with somebody like you who would benefit from listening. And if you have time, then leave me a positive review and that would be fabulous. Thank you for being your wonderful self, and I can't wait to chat next time.